the place for the independent creator, vlogger, podcaster, filmmaker, musician, writer, speaker to learn the tools and tricks that other creators have used to build their own successful platforms. This is Limelight DIY with your host, Ryan McKay. You don't need unlimited resources, just a little knowledge, some creativity, and, oh yeah, a whole lot of grit. Now here's your host, Ryan McKay.
And this is Limelight DIY. This is the podcast for the independent creator who's out there right now trying to figure out how they're going to take their platform and move it to the next level. My name is Ryan. It is my sworn duty to come to you each and every week with all the craziness in the world and bring you tips, tricks, hacks, and life stories from the people who have already been there to help you along your journey. And tonight is no exception to that rule. Tonight we have a veteran podcaster and a somewhat new YouTuber on the program. He's going to talk to us about what it takes to grow your podcast, but also the differences between doing a podcast and doing a YouTube channel, and what it takes to make the jump from one thing to the next, especially if you're not giving one or the other up. I want to remind everybody, Limelight DIY is a weekly podcast, and if you go to limelightdiy.com, you can find our website with all the trappings of a normal website. It's so very much more. At the bottom of the front page, there's going to be a little sign-up box. You could put your name and your email address in there, and Santa Claus is going to deliver twice a month a newsletter of sorts that's going to deliver those same tips, tricks, and hacks I was speaking about earlier, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We're also going to deliver bloopers and tools and fun stuff that, might not have made it onto the program. Also want to remind you, if you are a fan of the program and if you take anything from tonight's performance, I would really appreciate if on whatever podcasting platform you got this program, be it iTunes or Stitcher or iHeart or whatever crazy newfangled platform you're using, if you can go back there and leave a sincere review, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, and a quick review, a real honest review. Let me know how things are going. It's the way I find out what I should change, what I should keep going, and alert the algorithms that, yes, people are actually listening to Limelight DIY. Tonight we've got a friend of mine on the show. I've known this guy for about a year and a half right now. We met last year in Atlanta at a little convention called Langenkamp. And if you're not familiar with Langenkamp, it is the second biggest, I believe, pop culture convention in the entire United States. But it is definitely the biggest on the East Coast. We were doing a parade of all things. I'm not going to go too far into the costumes that were all over the place, but needless to say, it was a colorful parade full of pop culture icons. I may have seen a fat man dressed as a female Gizmo, but this is where I met today's first guest. This is Krazy Joe, and if you don't know Krazy Joe, well, you need to get your Megapodtastic on. Joe, thanks for joining us tonight, sir.
Hey, Ryan, first time, long time. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for being on the show. You are actually the very first podcaster that we've had on the show. So, shalom, sir.
Oh, yeah. Well, God bless you.
Thank you. Hey, do me a favor. For all the people at home who are not megapodlings, can you kind of go over what Megapodtastic is and what a megapodling is?
All right. Well, first of all, you did mention leaving reviews. So but before I get to that, let me just read to you the most recent review I have on my podcast, Megapodtastic. The most recent review I got on iTunes came from someone named Wacky Jose, oddly enough. It seems like a coincidence that I'm Krazy Joe and I got a review from Wacky Jose. But he gave me 1 star and wrote garbage. Yep, garbage. There you go. That's my the last review I received. But anyway, Megapodtastic. Well, I'll give you the full history. I started off about a decade ago. Actually, I've been podcasting for more than a decade now. I started off in 2007. In 2007, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I didn't know anyone in town. Didn't know anyone. Except my wife, who's now my ex-wife. We were together. We moved there, and we didn't know anyone. And I listened to a podcast called Slice of Sci-Fi. It was a very popular podcast at the time. It was actually featured. It was a podcast, but it was also on XM radio. so we had a lot of listeners who listened on XM radio, but I knew they were stationed out of Phoenix, Arizona. So I ended up reaching out to them when I got to town because I didn't know anyone. They were kind of the closest thing to anyone I knew, and I didn't know them either. And long story short, I ended up being a cast member on Slice of Sci-Fi. They invited me to join the cast. I was there for a year until I left Phoenix. So now I went from being podcast listener to thrust into the podcast world. I never set out to be a podcaster. It was basically the Slice of Sci-Fi guys just stuck me on mic. It was like, hey, here's a mic, talk. So now I come back to Philadelphia, and I'm getting emails from Slice listeners who are like, we miss Joe. He's got to have his own podcast. So my good friend, my best friend in this whole world, Mr. Dave Perillo, who is he's a great artist. If you don't know Dave Perillo, Google him because I gotta pimp my buddy out. He's the best artist around. But he says, I'll do a podcast with you. We'll co-host together. So we came up with the name Megapodzilla. And we were Megapodzilla for a number of years. It was just pop culture, movies, television, comics, toys, and fast food. That was sort of our thing at the beginning. Was we would critique fast food, like KFC at the time had come out with the Double Down. Was
it the heart attack as like a chicken sandwich?
Yeah.
Chicken.
Yeah. So we were talking about the Double Down, and also they were promising like free coupons for free chicken. And then at the time, there was like some deal where they said like, come in and we'll give you a coupon for free chicken. And so many people went that they decided we can't give out all this free chicken. So they started giving out coupons that were time stamped. So it's like, well, you can get your free chicken on this date, and the other guy can get his free chicken on this date. It was ridiculous. So we started making that like a feature of our show. And I'm ranting now. This is really unimportant. But the point I'm trying to make here is we were movies, television, and other things going on in the pop culture like chicken and KFC chicken. And eventually that turned to McRibs. We eventually went from chicken to McRibs, but there was always like a fast food component. So we were Megapodzilla for years, and then one day I got a cease and desist from Toho Pictures in Japan, who owns the copyright to Godzilla, and they said I was infringing on their copyright. I don't believe I was. I believe I could have fought this and won if I had the time and the money, which I had neither. So the easiest thing to do was change my name. And at the time, we had been Megapodzilla for so long that I thought if we were going to rebrand, I had to rebrand with a similar sounding name so as not to confuse our audience too much. And we became Megapodtastic. So that's where we are. Now, in the recent years, the show has evolved because I was a foul-mouthed gent about a decade ago. And the show was, when Dave and I were doing it, was often quite filthy. And now I am a father, and and I don't want my girls hearing that. So the show's a little more family-friendly than it used to be. That's in part the influence of my wife, and that is in part the death of my father, and me thinking, oh my God, my dad is looking down from heaven, and I have to be a good influence because I will be a great disappointment to him if he sees me putting out content like this. So there we go.
And Megapodlings would be, of course, the fans of the show.
Yes.
And what kind of content? I know the answer to this, but for the folks at home, what kind of content are the fans of the show being treated to?
We talk. We talk movies. We talk about. We have traditionally the show has segments. The segments have kind of fallen apart in the last year or so. It's become much more loose and conversational than it used to be. I would kind of like to get back to the old format, but we've departed a little bit from the old format. But we used to have segments. Now, every show didn't have to have every segment. We could, but we didn't have to have every segment. It was like what we have to talk about is what we have to talk about. We would start off with the Prediction Network. And the prediction network is when we would predict about upcoming movies, upcoming TV shows that we haven't seen yet. What do we think about them? Hey, there's the new Avengers trailer. What do we think about the Avengers trailer? Do we like it? Is it going to be good? Is this going to be a crappy movie? What do you think? And we kind of weigh in on our early opinions, our predictions. Then there was the high fives, where if there's something we like, we give it a high five. Hey, what do we got for high fives today? Here's what we got for high fives. I saw Stan and Ollie. Great movie. Heck of a movie. High five to it, Then the next thing would be the damage report. And that is, what did we not like? Oh, it's time for the damage report. What do you got? Oh, Michael Bay made another Transformers movie. It's garbage. Put it on the damage report. So
pretty easy one usually, yeah.
Yeah, those were our initial segments. As we were doing the show for several years, we came to realize that there were things that fell right in the middle. Things that were not good enough to really recommend. Things that weren't bad enough to put on the damage report. They were just kind of So we added a segment called the Mediocre Minute. And so yeah, those are our segments. And then early on, I knew I wanted to, because I came from Slice of Sci-Fi. And on Slice, we did celebrity interviews. We had an interview every week. And I knew I wanted to have celebrity interviews. But that was a tough nut to crack, because I had to get a celebrity. Like one celebrity. I had to get one celebrity who would talk to me. And then I figured if I got one, then I have a calling card. Then if I reach out to others, I could be like, I just had this guy on. So eventually we managed to get a pretty good collection of celebrity guests, I think. I'm impressed with some of the people I got on. I think it's amazing some of them actually wanted to talk to me.
and for the people at home, I don't want to just be a name dropper, but let's drop some names, shall we?
Zachary Levi, who's currently he's about to be Shazam in about a month. He was on promoting Heroes Reborn. We had the full cast, not all at once, one at a time. We had the full cast of the sci-fi series Being Human. Sam Witwer,
yes.
Sam Huntington, and Meaghan Rath. We had Meaghan Rath's brother, Jesse Rath, who's currently playing Brainiac 5 on Supergirl. At the time, he was promoting the TV show Defiance at the time. A lot of people from Sci-Fi Channel. We had a really good. We eventually got a great contact at Sci-Fi Channel, who got me some terrific guests. Josh Gates from what was his show? Expedition Unknown, was it? Yeah. Josh Gates was on with us. We had Robert Hayes from Airplane.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, he was awesome. And recently, our more recent ones. I've had Martin Robinson, who's Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. I've had David Newell, who was Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So yeah, those are some of them. And the first big guest we had, the one I said we needed a calling card, the one who was our first big guest that we could then throw out there like, hey, look who we had, was my first crush as a kid, Heather Langenkamp from Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, Mr. Snuffleupagus, Snuffy.
Now let's unpack this for a second, because the whole idea of Limelight DIY is helping the people who are just coming up, trying to figure out how to do certain things that are going to help them grow their own platforms. You mentioned that you ended up with a pretty good connection over at Sci-Fi. I don't want to throw names out there by any means or positions, but can you kind of unpack a little bit as to what your recommendation would be based off your own experience for someone who's trying to get into that world and make those connections?
If you can get, like I said, if you can get a guest, and really do a good job, I think, then you have something. If you're going to send emails out, hey, we'd like to have you on our show, you could send links to that, to the one interview you did. Hey, look who was recently on. And I think that's bound to get you some bites. And the more you get, the more legitimate you become, because people can search you and, that's this, see your history. So I will say this, it's a little harder these days. Podcasting a decade ago and podcasting today are a little different because celebrities are in the game now.
Yes.
A decade ago, it was little guys in the podcasting world. Then Chris Hardwick happened, and now it's Chris Hardwick. It's Gilbert Gottfried. It's Mark Maron. It's Conan O'Brien's doing a podcast. So it's like
Mike Rowe.
The celebrities are a little less interested in talking to the little guy these days.
Well, let me ask you this: when you started, and when you still, because for instance, I know that you had a Star Trek celebrity on recently, giving the folks at home your thoughts. What is a good way to make contact with these people to begin with? I mean, are you just going to their Twitter pages and reaching out that way? Are you going on their websites? How do you generally make first contact?
Conventions is good. Go to a convention, walk up to them. A lot of people at a convention will try to interview a celebrity on the spot. They'll have a camera, they'll have a recording device, they'll say, "Can I do an interview?" And some of them get it. A lot of them get it, in fact. That's never been my style. I don't like doing that. I think I've had greater results handing them a business card, saying, "I'd love to have you on my show. Could we do a phone interview sometime?" Then I usually get a business card, reach out to them a few weeks later. So that's a really good way. I have gotten through to people on Facebook. I have gotten through to people on Twitter. Not as frequently. They're not as likely to answer on Twitter. No, I mentioned we had the full cast of Being Human. Meaghan Rath from Being Human. I got her on Twitter. And basically it was, I had already interviewed her co-star, Sam Witwer, and I tweeted at her and said, "Hey, Sam Witwer's been on our show. When are you going to be on our show?" And I got a response 5 minutes later that said, "I'm down. Call my agent." And she sent me a direct message to, how to reach your agent. So that's a good way. Call the studio, call the network. I called Sci-Fi Channel directly. Said, "Hey, Sci-Fi, I got a podcast. I'd love to have someone from Warehouse 13 on my show." They said, "Oh, you need to talk to Gary." They give me Gary's number, Gary's email address. Gary got me Allison Scagliotti, who played Claudia on Warehouse 13. And then later on, he got me Aaron Ashmore from Warehouse 13. So yeah, but then I have Gary's email address. And then anytime there's a show I'm interested in, I would just send Gary a direct email. And now he's worked with me before. He knows who I am. And unfortunately, Gary is not with Sci-Fi anymore. And the new people at Sci-Fi aren't as happy to talk to me as Gary was.
It sounds to me like they got to get on the Megapod train is all.
Everyone's welcome on the Megapod train.
There's jammies for everybody. That's not going to make sense to anybody that doesn't know the show, but we'll explain that later.
No, Star Trek is my favorite thing in the world. I love There's nothing I love more than Star Trek. And oddly enough, I've never had a Star Trek cast member on Megapodtastic. I've tried, I've reached out to them, and Star Trek cast members just haven't been as anxious to talk to me.
So. And you know what? I can't help but wonder. Obviously, when you talk about Star Trek, I'm an admirer of Star Trek. I wouldn't call myself a Trekkie by any means, but there are some Star Trek fans who have been known in the past to become a little overly fervent, shall we say. I wonder if that might play into some of that to a degree.
It's possible. I don't know. It's very, very possible. I know, but I got Heather Langenkamp on. And I don't know if you know Heather Langenkamp's past. I don't know if you know anything about her, but she had a stalker for a number of years. She had a stalker, and she wasn't doing conventions, and it was like a scary time for her. But she was willing to talk to me. Of course, it's been years later, so I don't know. I don't know. Not sure.
Conjecture, no doubt about it.
Like Brent Spiner, when I asked Brent Spiner, he flat out told me, I don't have anything to talk to you about. He said, if I have a project, get in touch with me when I'm doing something. He's like, I'm out of work right now. I'm doing conventions. He's like, I've got nothing to say to you. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, as soon as I have work, I'll talk to you. But I don't know. That's kind of what I faced. LeVar Burton. LeVar Burton's got this reputation as being a real nice guy. Everyone loves LeVar Burton, right? Doesn't everyone love LeVar Burton? He's
Reading Rainbow guy.
Yeah, he's like a step under Mr. Rogers, right?
Yeah.
I don't like LeVar Burton.
Of course not. What a jerk.
No, I don't like LeVar Burton because LeVar Burton was rude to me.
Really?
Now, I always say, if I ask someone, would you be on my podcast, and they tell me no, I take no offense. Take no offense, none whatsoever. I understand, I get it. But when you blow me off like really, really like rude, I take offense, and that's what LeVar Burton did to me. LeVar Burton just went, no, I don't do podcasts. And I was like, oh.
No, I don't want to jump all over Jordy, particularly, but that does bring up a point that we probably should park on for a second, and that is there are going to be some rejections when you go to a celebrity, or you go to a pseudo celebrity, whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, I got this podcast, I've got this vlog, I've got this book that I'm writing, whatever it is that you're working on. There's going to be some of these celebrities that are really cool, and they remember what it was like when they were trying to get their start, and they'll go along with you. But there's going to be the odds and ends that not only do they say no, but they're going to give you some blowback. What would you say at this point is the takeaway from when you talk to a rude celebrity?
The takeaway is I take it personally because I wear my.
That's not where I was going.
I'm sorry. No, here's the thing. Like rudeness, I take personally. Rudeness is the only thing I take personally. But anyone who knows me well, and I don't know, maybe my listeners to the podcast, maybe my viewers on YouTube, maybe they don't know me well enough to know this, but I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve. Like, what you see is what you get. I don't put on any act. I've known other people who, when they turn the mic on, when they turn the camera on, something about them changes. They come to life. They they put on.
You're boarding.
Right. They I'm not really like that at all. Let me give you an example. This isn't about podcasting, but this is just my outlook on life in general. I was single, and I was dating. Or I was in the dating world, and a friend of mine said, well, you know how when you meet a girl, you never want to tell them that you collect comics or that you like Star Trek. You kind of you want to keep that on the down low until you know them a little bit.
Right.
Because that's going to scare them away. And my attitude was, no, I tell them that as soon as I meet them. Because if they're going to run away, I want them to get out of here and stop wasting my time so I can find the one who's not going to run away. It's like I'm not going to change who I am for anyone. So that's sort of my attitude. But anyway, but no, I wear I'm what you see is what you get. I really wear my heart on my sleeve. So when I come to you and I sincerely ask, hey, would you do this thing for me? If you blow me off like I'm a total waste of your time, that really hurts my feelings. It really does. And I've had I went up to Avery Brooks from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, my favorite Star Trek show, absolute favorite. I love Deep Space Nine. And I went up to Avery Brooks and said, would you be on my podcast? And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't do that because I don't know your podcast. I don't know what it's about. And how can I promote your podcast. And I got it. And he's like, it's not personal. And he even said it's not personal. And he shook my hand and he thanked me for talking to him. And I walked away and I'm like, well, that's a shame. He won't do my podcast, but man, he was really cool about it.
Yeah.
He's really cool. But then I don't do podcasts. Like, that is so far beneath me. You came to me and asked me to do a podcast. Don't you know who I am? I'm Reading Rainbow, man.
There's been times before where I've in the vlogging world before asked, hey, can I get just a minute or two? Gotten no, and they walk off. And it's simple, like I'd rather not. So I'm like, you respect it, but then when they get a little funny about it. But that being said, I mean, it is going to happen. Is I guess where I'm going with it. And unfortunately, when you enter this world of putting yourself out there are going to be those people who spit back in your face.
Oh yeah. Some of them are very rude, but not many. Not many. That's the beautiful thing. Most of them are very nice, very gracious. If they turn you down, they turn you down politely. And I probably shouldn't even take things personally. I probably, like, even when LeVar Burton is rude, I should probably be like, dude, that's Reading Rainbow there. That's just butterfly in the sky. I can go twice as high, like I should just, but that's my failing, I guess.
Let's take a quick moment away. I just want to remind everybody, again, the website is limelightdiy.com. If you go over there, we're going to have all the show notes. We're going to kind of break down some of the stuff that Joe just mentioned in terms of how to reach out to people, how to keep your composure, and all that. I know there's a lot of good information there, and we will break that down for you all in the show notes. And actually, I think it's a good time for Joe. Would you mind? Do you have contact information for Megapodtastic for the people who are trying to follow along at home too?
Well, you can find the show on iTunes. You can find it on Stitcher. Pretty much anywhere you get podcasts. We're at megapodtastic.com. And I've been on doing the YouTube, actually, even more than the podcast lately, and that's at youtube.com/megapodtastic. If you more Twitter, Facebook, all the regular places, youtube.com/megapodtastic, twitter.com/megapodtastic. We're easy to find. We're very, very easy to find. And if you need to reach me, this is a tricky email address. So get your pens ready. This is a tricky one. megapodtastic@gmail.com.
I've heard of this Gmail thing before. The kids are all doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk for a second about some of the changes that have happened on the show recently in terms of the format. Not only have you changed the way that the show sounds, but now there's a YouTube element to it too. What brought you to YouTube, and what are you thinking of the changeover?
Well, what brought me to YouTube was there's two guys, and you know them both. Yep. That I started watching on YouTube, and I just thought, man, these guys are pretty entertaining. One guy, he was just a born entertainer, and the other guy, it was what he did. He had a collection. Let's put it this way. He had a collection that would blow anyone's mind. And these guys were named Adam the Woo and Cinema Sickness. So I watched them both, thought, man, these guys are good. They're the first two people I ever hit the subscribe button to. Because before I found them, YouTube was where you watched music videos and trailers. Like, I didn't go there looking for, like, content. So I find these guys. Then, I'm a movie guy. Cinema Sickness got one of the largest collections of DVDs and movies in the world. You see this guy's library, it'll just blow your mind. So he came to my attention through podcasting, by the way. There's a podcast, or there used to be a podcast, I think they podfaded, called Dead Pit. It was a horror movie podcast called Dead Pit, and it was two guys out of Kentucky. The main guy was named the Creepy Kentuckian, and the Creepy Kentuckian had the thickest Kentucky accent you ever want to hear. And he kept talking about how this guy, and please forgive me, I do terrible accents, but he kept talking about this guy. There's this guy on YouTube, Cinema Sickness. This guy, Cinema Sickness. He makes me not want to buy DVDs anymore because I see him and I see that's an obsession there, and I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. I apologize to anyone listening in Kentucky. I know that is a horrible Kentucky accent. That's not even a Kentucky accent. I don't know what the heck that was. I do terrible accents. But anyway, his accent was so thick that I couldn't even understand that he was saying Cinema Sickness. And I'm like, what's he saying? This guy on YouTube, what's his name? And I was really struggling to hear what the name was. So finally I looked it up and I see this guy and I'm like, oh my God, this collection is insane. This is crazy. But long story short, Adam was the first guy I ever clicked the subscribe button. Cinema Sickness is the second guy I ever clicked the subscribe button. And then lo and behold, I find out Cinema Sickness lives 40 minutes away from me. Didn't know that. I'm like, oh, this guy's in my neighborhood. I had no idea. Because usually he's in his film library showing you the movies behind him. You don't know where he is.
No, he'd be anywhere.
But he would go to Goodwills and thrift shops. And one day he's at a thrift shop that is in the same parking lot as my daughter's daycare. I'm like, that's my neighborhood. What the heck? This guy's in my neighborhood? I didn't know that. So shortly after I met him by accident, I wasn't looking for him. And not like I didn't send him an email and say, hey, let's get together or anything like that. But I went to Blobfest, which is a big event in our local area every year. And he was there. And I saw him. And I had my little recorder. And I decided, I'm going to go over and talk to him. So I talked to him and said, hey, why don't you come on and be on my guest on my podcast? He says, all right. And then he sort of was the one who kind of got me doing YouTube because he started putting me on his channel. He's like, oh, let's go hunting. You'll come with me. And I'm like, all right. And suddenly I'm on camera and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm doing YouTube now.
And when you say hunting, you're talking about hunting for DVDs.
Yes. Hunting for DVDs.
Not, hey, let's get together and here's a gun or something like that.
No, that would be fun though. Not really. I can't kill
hunting for DVDs with a gun. Yeah.
Yeah. I've suggested that we go hunting for DVDs with a gun. Like we go out in the woods and wear yellow jackets and shoot.
If you go hunting for DVDs with a gun, I'm pretty sure that would count as grand theft. But
I want to hunt for them in the wild, like out in the woods, like those two DVDs are up in a tree nesting. They're
coming right for us.
So that's how I got into YouTube. I met one of the two YouTubers I was watching by accident. And then next thing I knew, I was a YouTuber. And then oddly enough, within a couple months, I met Adam the Woo for the first time. So within months of each other, I met the two guys who were the first two guys I watched. So.
It's funny. I've had a few other people on the podcast previously who also have that Adam the Woo connection going on, which is not necessarily the intention of what we've put together here, but it is funny how certain people do get around so much, and he's definitely one of those people who seems to.
Well, I wouldn't know you if it weren't for him.
This is true. As I choke, when, as I mentioned, we did meet at DragonCon 2 years ago, and he is the one that introduced me to you to begin with. I was down there with Adam and previous guest Jacob the Carpetbagger and our mutual friend Greg.
And somehow I didn't meet Greg that day.
I didn't know that until last year. Like when you were coming to town and I'm like, oh yeah, get together with Greg. Like, yeah, I'd met him before. Like, really? How'd that happen? Because he was like,
I don't know.
Away from me.
I don't know. I didn't meet Greg at DragonCon, which seems odd now. I don't know how that happened, but but then again, I don't know. I don't know. Somehow somehow we didn't meet each other at that time, but we met now, and I'm glad we did because he's a heck of a great guy.
Greg's a great guy, and we are going to be having him on the program in just a couple of weeks. He's put out a new channel. He went from a channel called Adventures by George, which was a exploration channel to a degree. Started a second channel called Greg's Game Room, and it's all about arcades and arcade one-up machines and things like that. And he wasn't feeling the passion about the original channel anymore and made the switch. And the new channel is just going gangbusters. I mean, he's shooting through the roof all of a sudden. And we are going to have him on in a couple weeks to kind of explain what drove him to the change and some of the tips that he can give you for how he's had such exponential growth over the last 2-3 months. So, a little plug there. Joe, a little segment we like to do on all these is we like to talk to you about what tools, technological tools, are in your utility belt that you use for your craft.
It's a good question. I'm very low tech. I have friends who are very, very, very good at podcasting. They know all the tricks, and I don't know how they do half the things they do. One of my good friends wrote the book on podcasting. My friend Chuck Tomasi wrote the book Podcasting for Dummies. Before he and I were friends, I used his book to get my podcast up and going. It's like years later now I'm friends with him. But he's a tech whiz. He knows what he's doing. Even with his book, I can't figure out some stuff. I guess that means I'm a super dummy because podcasting for dummies, there's still some things I didn't crack. But I use Audacity. I use GarageBand. And that's about it. That's it. One thing that frustrates me is that I don't know how. And this is terrible. I've been podcasting for a decade. I don't know how to put music and sound effects into a live podcast. Well, what I mean is, while we're recording, if you and I were recording right now and we're talking, Chuck could bring up the music so that you would hear it in your headset and I would hear it in my headset, and he'd be like, let's fade in the music now. Let's fade out the music. I do all that after the fact. I don't know how he does that.
No, I do too, but figured don't need to know it yet. But
yeah.
Maybe I need to talk to Chuck. Maybe I need to have Chuck on the show too.
Hey, if you want to do a show on podcasting, I got to tell you, there's no better guests that you could have than Chuck and his partner Craig. They've been doing the Technorama podcast for it's got to be one of the longest running podcasts out there.
And this will be in the show notes too. This is something. Let me ask all the folks at home as you're listening, if you would like for us to reach out to Chuck and learn a little from him, definitely let us know. Jump onto either limelightdiy.com and leave a comment there, or hit us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or any of those other crazy sites and let us know. And let me ask you this. This is usually the wrap up question for you, Joe. What content are you particularly enjoying these days? Be it a podcast, a YouTube station, maybe a book, a magazine, a website.
How in depth can I get here? How? Because I could give you a laundry list.
pick 3 that you think are having the biggest effect and that people at home would take something away from them too.
Okay. And we're just talking in the world of original content being created. Like, it's.
No.
I'm not going to sit here and say like, you should be watching Star Trek Discovery or something like that.
If it is making a difference in what you do, then that's fine.
No, that's a good question. It's a good question. Making a difference in what I do,
influencing you, or as an alternative, pimp some of your friends.
Pimp some of my friends. Okay, because the one thing I'm trying not to be too influenced, if anything, because I don't want to. I don't want to accidentally copy someone else's style, which I've been guilty of. I've been guilty of. But yeah, no. Adam the Woo and Cinema Sickness continue to be two of the biggest influences out there. I in the world of podcasting, like I said, Chuck and Craig over at Technorama, you can't do any better than those guys. I don't think I'm biased, but they're my friends. But heck, one of them wrote the book, like I said. So there you go.
Substantial, yeah.
And what you and Greg do is very influential, because I don't know, like, whereas you look at someone like Adam, he has a freedom you and I don't have.
Correct.
He has no wife, he has no kids, he can go anywhere, he can do anything. So yeah, he's putting out amazing content. Today I'm here, today I'm there, today I'm there. But you and I couldn't hope to do that.
No.
So I look at a guy like you and a guy like Greg, and I draw influence there because you're in a very similar station in life than I am. So I could say, well, what are they doing? Mm-hmm. They're doing things that are within their means. So I could, of course, I don't have, I know you don't do this anymore. You don't do this anymore. I know you don't do this anymore, but I don't have a season pass to Disney and access to Disney that a lot of the Orlando vloggers can always fall back on.
It's low hanging fruit. There's no doubt about it. I'm not saying that all the content that comes out of there is bad, because a lot of it's really good, but it's easier.
I love that content. I love that content because if I could be in Disney every day, I would. So if I could sit and watch someone else in Disney, that's my vicarious Disney trip right there.
Oh yeah, and there is a huge group of people who watch that religiously, and more power to them. Call it perhaps familiarity breeding contempt. I almost said content. Contempt. But I've done it on to other things.
My challenge right now, especially with YouTube, is it's a visual medium. And I'm afraid a lot of what I do is too dry, because I'm doing a channel that talks about movies. Mm-hmm. And if I just point the camera at myself and talk about movies, well, that's what I do. It's really what I do. But I'm like, can I be making this more visually interesting? And sometimes it's as simple as, like, I did a video the other day talking about the history of the DC cinematic universe. And I had the Blu-rays in front of me, and I could hold them up. It's like, here's something visual. But I don't know. Like, it's a tricky thing. It's like, how do you sit and talk movies and make it visually interesting? Use clips from the movies, you're going to get a content strike against you. So I don't know. That's a tricky thing.
No, I totally get that. We are going to wrap up here. I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you who are listening at home. LimelightDIY.com is the website. Our guest today is Krazy Joe from Megapodtastic. He always wraps up his show a particular way. So I'm going to ask him, Joe, would you please wrap up Limelight DIY tonight with the ending call off for Megapodtastic?
I can. Would you like the story on where that came from?
I think it would make more sense.
I have a friend. You guys, I've mentioned already. My friend Dave Perillo is a great artist. He has friends who are artists, and one of his friends is a guy named Scott Derby. And Scott Derby had a T-shirt for sale on tfury.com. And this is back when tfury.com, I don't know if you're familiar with that site. It used to be a different T-shirt every day. Mm-hmm. You only had one day to get the shirt. After 24 hours, the shirt was gone. Now they've changed their model, and you can pretty much get their shirts anytime you want. But the shirt of the day is cheaper.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, you can get it cheap today. Tomorrow you're going to pay twice as much, but they're always there. Well, at this time, it was only 24 hours and then gone. And my friend Scott Derby, one of Dave's coworkers, excellent artist, had a shirt up for sale, and it was coming. We knew it was coming. We knew the date it was going to be on T-Fury. So we decided to have him as a guest. And he was a guest on the podcast, and he ended the segment by saying, "Keep the faith." And we stopped recording, and he said, "Keep the faith? Did I just say keep the faith? Why did I say keep the faith? I never say keep the faith." And then he's like, you say something one time. You say it one time, but it's recorded, and it's a podcast, and it's going to go out there, and people are going to hear it, and now they're going to think that's like my catchphrase. That's like this thing that I always say. It's this dopey thing like, "Hey everyone, keep wearing those pajamas." And I took the audio because I was still recording, and I put that as a tag at the end of the episode, which he was not expecting. And he listened to the episode, and he's like, "You put my rant about keep the faith in there?" I go, "Oh yeah, that was hilarious." So the keep wearing those pajamas thing went out as a tag at the end of the episode. So after that, we just said that's our sign off every week. Keep wearing those pajamas. So,
and I believe you actually sell or sold pajamas too, did you not?
If you go to cafepress.com/megapodtastic, there's a great number of things you can buy: t-shirts, flasks, cups, drinkware. But yeah, there's pajamas on there.
And with that, let's wrap this one up. Joe, would you like to play us out, sir?
Keep wearing those pajamas.
We'll see you next time on Limelight DIY.